The morning light seeped gently through the lace curtains, painting golden patterns across the worn wooden floor of my bedroom. My room, my sanctuary. Every corner of it held a story. The rocking chair by the window where I'd nursed my daughter, Elena, as a baby. The dresser that still carried the faint scent of my late husband's cologne. The faded rug where my cat, Snowy, used to curl up before he grew too old to climb the stairs. Everything in that room was a piece of me. A collection of quiet years, sacrifices, and memories that only mothers carry in silence. Elena came into the room that evening, her phone in hand, scrolling carelessly while I folded the freshly laundered sheets. Her voice had changed lately, clipped distant, like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Mom," she said, her tone casual yet sharp. "You don't need this room anymore." I froze, the sheet slipping from my hands. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked, forcing a soft smile. She didn't look up. "David and I were talking. You barely leave this room. It's not healthy for you to stay cooped up here all day. We thought, maybe you could move downstairs into the small storage room. It's easier for you, fewer stairs. And this room, well, we could use it for something else." My heart sank, but I kept my voice steady. "Something else." She finally looked at me, her eyes darting away quickly as if avoiding the weight of what she'd said. "Maybe a guest lounge. Or a study for David. He needs space to work." A laugh escaped me, weak and uncertain. "Oh, Elena, this is your father's room. Our room. It's full of memories. Surely, we can find another place for David's things." Her jaw tightened. "Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just a room." Just a room. I wanted to tell her how, after her father died, this room became my only comfort, where I cried quietly into his old shirts, where I prayed for her success, where I wrote letters I never sent. I wanted to tell her that every night, I whispered her name to God, thanking him for giving me a daughter worth every sacrifice. But I said nothing. I simply nodded and told her I understood. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, the same one through which I'd once watched Elena play in the garden, her laughter echoing like music. She used to run inside, breathless and smiling, saying, "Mama, look at my flowers." Now she avoided my gaze, spoke to me as though I were a shadow taking up space. When dawn came, I heard the sound of voices downstairs, David's low, commanding tone and Elena's impatient replies. I didn't think much of it until the thud of footsteps came up the stairs, followed by the sound of furniture scraping. Confused, I walked into the hallway and froze. The door to my room was wide open. Men were carrying out boxes, my boxes. The dresser was gone, the curtains ripped down. My husband's portrait leaned face down against the wall. "Elena!" I gasped, rushing forward. "What's happening?" She turned to me, arms crossed, her expression cool. "We decided to start early, Mom. The workers are clearing out the room. Don't worry, your things are safe in the garage." "My things?" I whispered, staring at the emptiness behind her. "Yes," she said simply. "You'll have your new room ready by tonight. It's smaller but cozier." My knees went weak. The world blurred as if the house itself were spinning away from me. She turned back to the workers, her voice brisk. "Make sure you repaint. Something bright, cream or white. We want this room to feel new." That was the moment I realized I had been replaced. Not as a mother, but as a presence. The home I'd built, the memories I'd tended like fragile flowers, were being scrubbed clean as if I'd never existed. And though I said nothing, though I smiled faintly when she looked back at me, something deep within me cracked open. Not in despair, but in quiet, simmering resolve. By the next morning, the house felt different. Colder, quieter, hollow in places that used to hum with life. My footsteps echoed strangely as I walked down the hallway toward what used to be my room. The scent of paint stung my nose. The door was wide open, and sunlight poured over a space stripped bare of its soul. The walls were freshly painted a sterile white, my floral curtains replaced with sleek blinds. The old rocking chair gone. The photo of my late husband, Henry, vanished. The warmth that once embraced me every time I entered this room had been scraped away, replaced by something shiny and empty. Elena stood in the middle of the room, admiring it as though it were an accomplishment. "Doesn't it look so much better, Mom?" she asked, her voice light, almost cheerful. I swallowed hard. Where are my things? In the garage, she said, waving a hand. Don't worry, I kept what was important. I walked past her, my fingers tracing the wall where Henry's portrait once hung. My hands trembled. You kept what was important, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. She turned, her face tightening in irritation. Mom, please don't start. We needed this room to be functional. You'll be much more comfortable downstairs. We've set it up nicely. There's even a small window. I followed her to the basement. The window was a narrow slit of glass at ceiling level, too high for me to see out of. A single bed sat in the corner, beside a wooden cabinet that smelled of mold. The air was cold, damp, and heavy. It's temporary, Elena said, her voice softening in a way that felt rehearsed. Once you get used to it, you'll see it's for the best. For the best. That phrase echoed through my mind all day. For whose best? Hers? David's? I unpacked in silence that night, though there wasn't much left to unpack. My wedding photo frame had a crack down the glass. The old letters Henry had written me gone. My jewelry box, the one he'd gifted me on our 10th anniversary, was nowhere to be found. I went upstairs to ask about it, but as I reached the top step, I stopped. Their voices carried from the kitchen. We'll have to redo the kitchen next, David was saying. Once your mother moves into assisted living, we can finally list the house. This neighborhood's value has doubled. My heart lurched. Elena's voice came next, hesitant but firm. I know. It's just she's still my mother. David chuckled. She was your mother. Now she's just a tenant in your space. Be practical, Elena. You deserve this. I stood frozen, my hand gripping the railing. My ears burned, my chest tight with disbelief. Every word was like a knife twisting deeper. After everything I'd done, after raising her alone, working double shifts, paying for her college, I had become an obstacle to be removed. I quietly retreated downstairs before they could see me. The room felt smaller than before, its dampness clinging to my skin. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the tears come, slow, silent, bitter. Hours passed before I moved again. I stared at the wall and thought about Henry. How he had promised me that this house would always be our safe place, our legacy for Elena. Our daughter will grow up surrounded by love, he'd said. And now, that love had been buried under coats of white paint and greed. But as the night deepened, something inside me shifted. Beneath the sorrow, a quiet flame began to burn. I realized something vital. They had taken my room, my memories, and my comfort. But they hadn't taken my will. I wiped my tears, stood up, and looked around. If Elena and David thought they could erase me, they had underestimated the woman who built this home with her bare hands. I may have lost my room, but I still had my mind, and my memories were about to become the sharpest weapon I had. For weeks, I lived in that cold, cramped basement room, my exile beneath the house I'd built with love. But in the quiet darkness, I began to think clearly. The sorrow that once smothered me hardened into something sharper, steadier. Revenge, I realized, didn't always need to roar. Sometimes it only had to whisper. I started by pretending to forget things, to move slower, to smile when Elena entered the room. I became the obedient, harmless old mother they thought I was, small, frail, invisible. It was easy for them to underestimate me. That's what made it all the more satisfying. Every morning, I went upstairs and offered to help with breakfast. Elena would brush me off with an impatient smile. It's fine, Mom. You'll just make a mess. So I stayed silent and observed. I noticed how she wrung her hands when David was angry. I saw how her eyes darted toward the window every time she heard footsteps in the yard. I saw fear there, the kind that doesn't come from guilt, but from knowing something is wrong. And I decided to make that fear grow. The guest lounge, once my room, was where I began. I started by placing small things back inside when no one was around. The porcelain angel Henry had given me, one of his cufflinks, the music box that played our wedding song. At first, I left them where Elena wouldn't notice right away, on a shelf, behind a cushion, under the lamp. Then I waited. It took 3 days for her to react. I was knitting in the corner one afternoon when she burst into the kitchen, her face pale. Mom, she said breathlessly, did you put that old music box in the lounge? I looked up, innocent and calm. Music box? Oh, the one Henry bought in Paris? I thought it was in the garage. It was, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But I heard it playing last night. It was sitting on the table. I shrugged. Maybe Henry missed his room. Her eyes widened. That's not funny. I smiled faintly. Who said it was a joke? After that, strange things began to happen. The lights in that room flickered at night. A small trick I achieved by loosening the wiring when they were gone. The smell of Henry's cologne, a brand he'd worn for decades, began to linger in the corners. I sprayed it lightly from an old bottle before going to bed. Sometimes, I'd play the music box softly and leave it just out of sight, so when they entered the room, the sound would fade as if someone had stopped it. Elena started sleeping with the lights on. David, skeptical at first, grew irritated. You're letting your imagination get to you, he snapped one night. It's just an old house. But fear is contagious. And guilt amplifies it. I watched their tension grow. The way they whispered in corners. The way they avoided the guest lounge altogether. I saw Elena's once proud shoulders droop, her eyes ringed with sleeplessness. Then, one afternoon, while they were out, I opened the small lockbox hidden under a loose floorboard in the basement. The one Henry had shown me years ago. Inside was the original will. The document that proved the house was legally mine. Elena didn't know it existed. She thought the newer draft, stored in the lawyer's office, had replaced it. But Henry never filed it. And now, it would become the final piece of my quiet revenge. That night, I sat in the kitchen and stared at the family portrait on the wall. The one taken before everything changed. My smile in that photo was soft, trusting, unaware. I felt a pang of sadness for that woman. But she was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, colder, and wiser. A woman who'd been erased and yet found a way to haunt the space she once called home. Before I went to bed, I whispered softly toward the ceiling, "Rest easy, Henry. They'll soon understand what it means to take everything from someone who gave them the world." And somewhere in the empty house above me, I could have sworn I heard the faint creak of our old rocking chair. As if he had heard me, and was waiting for the final act. The morning I chose for the final act was calm and bright. The kind of morning that makes the world look innocent, even when it isn't. The autumn sunlight spilled through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. I had already packed a small suitcase and placed it by the door. I wasn't leaving in shame this time. I was leaving on my terms. Elena and David sat in the kitchen, their faces drawn and pale. They hadn't been sleeping well. The house had seen to that. Every night, faint music would echo through the halls, the soft scent of Henry's cologne wafting from nowhere. I knew it was cruel, but I also knew what they had done to me was far crueler. Elena looked up when I entered, her voice brittle. "Mom, we need to talk." "Of course," I said, taking a seat across from her. My hands were steady, my heart calm. She hesitated, glancing at David before speaking. We think it's time you moved out. David found a senior home that's really nice. They have nurses, a garden, activities." I raised a hand gently. "Elena," I interrupted. "There's no need to pretend. I know what you're planning. You've wanted me gone for a long time." Her lips parted, her eyes flickering with guilt and something close to fear. "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I said softly. "You took my room, my memories, and you planned to sell this house the moment I was gone. I heard you." David's face hardened. "You were eavesdropping?" "I was living in the same house you wanted to erase me from," I replied, my voice low but firm. "But you see, there's one thing you never learned about me, David. I don't disappear quietly." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. "This," I said, placing it on the table, "is from my lawyer." David frowned. "What is it?" Elena reached for it, her hands trembling. She unfolded the papers, scanning them quickly. Then she went still, her face draining of color. This says," she looked up, eyes wide. "This says the house belongs to you. Entirely to you." "It always did," I said gently. "Your father made sure of that before he died. The will you knew about was never filed. I found the original, the one that leaves everything to me." David snatched the papers from her hands, flipping through them. "This can't be real." It's real," I interrupted. My lawyer has already confirmed it. You'll both receive a notice soon. You have 30 days to leave the property. Elena stared at me, tears gathering in her eyes. Mom, please, you can't do this. We're your family. I rose slowly, the years of pain and disappointment finally lifting from my shoulders. Family doesn't erase the person who gave them everything. Family doesn't throw away memories like garbage. You said I didn't need my room anymore, Elena. I paused, meeting her eyes with a calm she couldn't understand. Now you don't need this house. Silence filled the kitchen. David's face was twisted in anger, but he said nothing. Elena broke down, sobbing quietly, her head in her hands. I felt no joy in her tears, only the heavy ache of what could have been. I walked to the door, picked up my suitcase, and turned back one last time. You could have had love, peace, and a mother's home forever. But greed leaves no room for grace. With that, I stepped outside. The cool breeze met my face like a blessing. The air smelled of freedom, sharp and clean. A few days later, I settled into a small seaside cottage that my lawyer helped me arrange. It wasn't large, but it was filled with sunlight and peace. I placed Henry's photograph on the table beside my chair, lit a candle and whispered, "We have our home back, love, not made of bricks but of memory." That night, as the waves whispered against the shore, I opened the old music box one last time. The soft tune filled the room, gentle and sweet. I smiled through my tears. They took my room, I murmured, but not my soul. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly, knowing my revenge had been silent, pure, and just.